And then y'all never ever see me fight when I'm like, y'all never see me fight like angry. Like, y'all just see me slam somebody and start smiling. I smiled it off. Y'all ain't never actually really see me like, get on that. I know we gotta get on that with light skin. Cause he already scared. If you try to scare somebody that's already scared, that make you a okay. I'm not even gonna do all that. Mandatory. Hey, I ain't gonna lie, I was a mandatory at 140. Ain't even have a fight at 140 yet. Made me the mandatory. Huh. Bam. They made me the mandatory at 147. Ain't have a fight yet. Huh. Bam. Mandatory. Somebody love me. I don't know who it is, but somebody love me.
Gustavo, you broke a lot of news on Cigar Talk. Originally, when we had our first conversation, you gave us a lot of insight that the mandatory was coming. You gave us the insight that the split would be 75-25. And then subsequently, we saw Bill Haney says, I just spoke with WBO Boxing Organization. He added the WBO, President Gustavo. He says, he told me Keyshawn Davis and Jay Prince called him and set this whole thing up. So that story about the kid not knowing what he was getting into or what was going on is far from the truth. Can you please give us some clarity on that?
Elaborate, sure. The facts, like you guys like to say, straight up facts. I received a call from Mr. Prince inquiring whether the WBO would consider Keyshawn as a former undefeated WBO lightweight champion, whether he would be considered to be installed in the ratings welterweight division and consequently be designated the mandatory. So Mr. Prince gave me a call to ask what will be the procedure from a regulatory standpoint. So I basically explained.
When did that happen?
Months ago.
Okay.
I don't recall the exact date. It was months ago. So once I received the call from Prince, he chimed in, the kid, Keyshawn, and Keyshawn wanted some clarity as to the process. So I explained to them this. I didn't guarantee them any outcomes because it will be irresponsible because I don't make that call. I can make recommendations, but there's a championship committee composed of 4 members that they vote on the matter. And we publish all of our rulings and decision-making. And I tweet and I try to bring the utmost transparency and answer most of everyone's questions when I have the time. So I explained to them the process. Thereafter, they filed a petition to consideration and designation of mandatory. And he was granted the mandatory designation unanimously by the committee.
Okay. So I guess what Bill was saying, he said that they set this up. You're just saying he asked you what is the formal process of how I can petition my guy to be mandatory. It doesn't with the WBO. It doesn't where you give me a call behind the scenes. Let's do this. No. We always ask either managers, advisors, promoters, submit everything in writing so we can have it in black and white. And if there's any misleading argument, I got the facts to impeach the person or the individual raising that assertion. You know, I'm a lawyer, man. So we do things by the book.
Hello.
Steve, the legendary Steve Kim. May I speak to him, please?
Yes, I am here. Coach Mal, how you doing?
Hey, what's up, man? It's been a long time.
Long time. It's always a good time. A lot of things going on, and I hope you are well, and hello to your fine audience.
Oh, yeah, I appreciate that, man. Listen, man, everybody's here. Steve, before we get into, I got a few questions to ask you, man. I know you probably one of the most busiest people I know in sports entertainment. You do some of everything, man. Let everybody know what you have going on.
Well, I mean, we taped the 3 knockdown rule. It'll be out. It's already out in podcast form, but the YouTube version comes out at 4 p.m. with Mario Lopez and I. We give a full rundown of the past weekend, and we talked about the Keyshawn Davis situation. Then I also do Tuesdays and Thursdays. I am on the Coach JB show, and I did my segment earlier this morning, and I'll be back on in a couple days. And then I'm on with Jason Whitlock at Fearless various times throughout the week. And also for your audience that wants to read my written work, most of it is on boxing. I now have a Substack at stevekimboxing.substack.com. I do a couple of short podcasts every week, and I do at least 2 or 3 written articles, and we have monthly and yearly subscriptions available.
Man, I appreciate that, man. Just letting everybody know. Steve, man, like you've been in the boxing for a long time. You know a lot of people in the sport. And, you know, I remember I always revert back to a conversation that me and you had. You told me, you say, and I want to know if you remember this. You say, Coach, I have come to the conclusion that I have seen the best years of boxing that I'm going to see. Do you remember telling me that?
Oh, absolutely. And when I said that, I was at Phil Training. We have a monthly boxing dinner. You attended one time when you were out here in Southern California. And I said that to Doug Fisher. This was during the pandemic, or right in the middle of it, where they're doing the physical spacing. But we're at dinner, and I said, Doug, we were very lucky to have grown up when we were kids to at least experience in our own way the Hagler, Leonard, Duran, Tommy Hearns era, and then we also got Mike Tyson. And then after that, when we started covering the game, Coach, we got to see Barrera, Morales, Pacquiao, Mayweather, Winky Wright, Bernard Hopkins, Roy Jones, all those guys. And so
Calzaghe.
back then, yes, all of them. De La Hoya, obviously. Got to give him credit. Fernando Vargas.
Trinidad.
So now, Trinidad. So just think about all the stuff we got to see. And then I got to see as a kid, 1984, the greatest Olympic team of my experience, because I wasn't old enough to really appreciate it in '76. But Pernell Whitaker, Meldrick Taylor, Terrell Biggs, Evander Holyfield, Virgil Hill, Mark Breland. So that's what I grew up on. And I grew up where you got to watch boxing on ABC, CBS, NBC, various other networks. And there was pay-per-view back then. But you'd always get to see the fights eventually, and you saw more of the good fights that you wanted. And, I think a lot of this is cultural and maybe even a commentary on society, Coach, because we're about the same age. When I think of guys like James Toney, Mike McCallum, I really feel like, man, these were men. None of these guys are perfect. We're all flawed human beings. I felt like, man, we are covering men, right? I just look at some of the behavior of the fighters today. It's just like, I don't know if I'm covering men. I really don't. And I don't want to come off as too critical. Maybe I'm that guy that's telling everyone to get the hell off my lawn, but that's the way I feel. And Coach, I ain't changing.
Steve, I did a segment yesterday, and I was talking about different generations, and Marvin Hagler and Roberto Duran and Sugar Ray Leonard in terms, they came from the baby boomer era. They were baby boomer boxers. And I was looking at, and then of course the guys who came before that, they were just vicious. But I said that I noticed, I was doing a comparison. Those guys came up under rough conditions. No, Ray Leonard was always, he was the golden boy before the golden boy, of course. Yeah. But, I'm looking at how those guys represented the sport, the passion, how it, and they became rich at the same time. And then what came after them, of course we had the Pernell Whitakers. That was the Roy Jones. That was the Gen X era. That's my era, the Gen X era, and just how they, how they went about the sport. Mike Tyson and all of them, right? And then I'm looking at this, and then you had the millennial era, which who just retired? Terrence Crawford, Sean Porter, Keith Thurman, all of those guys. Tim Bradley, those guys. And then now we have the Gen Z boxers. That's the Shakur Stevensons, the Keyshawn Davises, the Devin Haneys, the Ryan Garcias, the Tank Davises. And I'm like, it looks totally different. Am I wrong in that?
No, and I've said this before on with Fearless on Jason Whitlock. Sports reflects culture, and culture reflects sports. And I think what we're seeing today is really mirroring what happens in the overall larger society. And, when you look at what's happening, let's go with Keyshawn. He seems to be a big focus, is that the great thing is that fighters today have more options and choices and rights, right? Isn't that great, right? You know what the problem is? They over leverage it. That's the problem. No one has ever said fighters shouldn't get paid a lot. No one has ever said fighters shouldn't have a choice in their career direction. Nobody has ever said that they shouldn't want what's best for them. Right. The problem is they take it too far. And in the last 2 years, I've made it very clear, because a lot of people try to talk about the Muhammad Ali Act and Zuffa. I said, you know what? I'm not concerned about fighters' rights. They have rights. You know what I'm concerned about nowadays? From the time whenever I finish covering boxing, from the time I am here to the time I stop covering boxing, I care about the fans. I care about the doggone consumers, you people out there that pay for the sport. Because quite frankly, the decisions that are made by the fighters and their management is generally a slap in the face to what we want as the paying consumer, and it makes me sick.
To me, Steve, it appears that these kids today, they have a sense of entitlement that I've never seen before. Like,
there's no doubt. There's no doubt.
On what planet does a fighter who have 15 professional fights, he's won one title at 135, loses the belt on the scale, moves up to 140. Moves up to 140. He has a fight, a non-title fight, because he don't have a belt, and then he moves up to 147. Never fought at 147 before. Don't have a title. Don't have anything. The most money this kid has ever made, according to what Dan Rayfield and Rick Glaze and stuff have said online, was $1 million. And in what world that does your promoter offer a guy who's only had 15 fights $3 million? What fighter on the planet with 15 fights makes $3 million? I haven't met him yet, right?
Well,
go ahead.
Coach, to what you said, one that is entitled, but to be completely accurate, one that has also been enabled. Because these promoters, because they're all in business of trying to create their own monopoly and they had their own networks, they had to sign a lot of these fighters to exorbitant deals with inflated minimum purses. And then they really couldn't make what I'd call real fights because they got to keep them afloat, got to get them to a title. I actually think boxing should go back to the way it was way back in the old days when the promoters didn't have long-term exclusive deals with fighters. They just made fights.
Yeah.
Because honestly, it hasn't been great for the business. Fighters are fighting less and less, asking for more. But to your overall point, Coach, you are absolutely right. The modern-day fighter asks for more and gives less than any other generation of boxer.
Yeah, I've never seen this, and then this is the norm. So I'm gonna tell you something else. I've been studying this. The fan base, especially on social media, on the internet, is different. The overall fan bases are streamers, streaming boxing fans, and influencer boxing fans. This is the majority of the fan base here. When I listen to these guys, when they call into the show, different boxing shows, and they make these arguments that just make no damn sense. And I'm listening to a interview from Keyshawn Davis's trainer. This guy had the nerve to say that, okay, Devin Haney should give money from his purse in order to make up the difference that Keyshawn Davis wants to make from Top Rank that he's not getting. This is a $900,000, $1 million fighter. And he feels he's entitled to $5 million or whatever $1 million he wants, to the point to where I want Steve Kim, when you get paid, Steve, I need you to give me a percentage of your purse to make up the difference for what I want. If you really, like, I ain't never heard no shit like this for my life.
Well, Coach, I didn't know boxers were equity partners. I thought this was professional prize fighting. I mean, who was that trainer? E.F. Hutton? This is the reality of the Keyshawn Davis situation, him turning down 3 and then not wanting to settle for 2.1. Bottom line is very simple. I said this last week on the Kareem Cosell podcast on my Substack. He didn't think he can win. Because here's the reality, Coach. If he was fighting Steve Kim, he would have taken $3 million.
Yeah.
He would have taken 2.1. In fact, he would have taken a lot less than that. He did not think he could make the money. And unfortunately, and it's always been this way, but it's more pronounced now, boxing management and the handling of careers is the balancing of risk versus reward. And unfortunately, none of the television networks are enforcing any protocols in terms of quality control. So all these years of promoters having exclusive deals with promoters, and they just put up any fight they want without a network head saying, no, you got to give us something better. It has created and really contributed to this sense of entitlement that how in the world can you dare tell a fighter now, no, that's not good enough. We're not allowing you to do that.
Yeah.
So a lot of this is fostered. But the reality is, Coach, if Keyshawn Davis really thought he could win the fight, he would have taken that $3 million because he would have parlayed the victory. See, a lot of these guys do not just look at a fight of that nature, right? Keyshawn Davis, about Devin Haney. He does not look at it as an opportunity. He looks upon it as an annuity. I'll tell you a story. And I've told this many times recently, and I'm repeating myself, but I don't think your audience has heard it. When Evander Holyfield was negotiating the first fight for Mike Tyson, it was in the early fall or early September after Tyson had knocked out Bruce Seldon the weekend Tupac got shot, that infamous weekend, right?
I remember that, yeah.
So Jim Thomas was the attorney for Evander Holyfield, and he had to meet King in Toronto at some hotel room. He set up an office in a big ballroom, and immediately the meeting goes left. Don and Evander are yelling at each other about what the fight is worth. They're going to get this much, that much. And Jim Thomas said, whoa, wait a minute. He goes, Don, I need a few minutes with my client. So Evander and Jim Thomas go out the door, close it, and Jim says to Evander, what you're doing in there is going to cost you the fight. And Evander says, well, he's not showing me respect. He's not being fair. And Jim Thomas says, Evander, if you're looking for respect and being fair, Don King was not the guy to meet with. You know what they're trying to do. They don't think you can win. Nobody does. But here's the thing. Because no one is giving you a shot, if you let me negotiate a rematch clause after you beat them, I can get you everything you want because they don't think you can win. And Don thinks you're a dead man. So, but again, you can ask for everything you want in the first fight, and you may negotiate your way out of this. And Evander stepped back. He calmed down because he was really angry when Jim Thomas asked him that question. He said, Jim, you handle this. I'm going dancing.
Hold on. Repeat that. What he said?
Evander Holyfield said, Jim, you're absolutely right. He goes, I'm going dancing. Negotiate that fight. And in the rematch, the bite fight in 1997, before one pay-per-view was sold, Coach, in 1997, Evander Holyfield's guarantee for Tyson 2 was $33.5 million. Adjust that for inflation. That's probably what, 40, 45 million?
45,
but that's because he understood to get to the real payday, I got to win the first fight. So I have a question for Keyshawn Davis. Did you actually think you could beat Devin Haney?
That's a help. You know, hey, hold on. I got another one. Tell us the story about Marvin Hagler and Sugar Ray Leonard. How that fight came about from a money standpoint.
Well, from a money standpoint, that's really a fighter and a promoter having faith in each other. What happened was Evander Holyfield, Ray Leonard and his lawyer, Mike Traynor, called Marvin and they say, Marvin, you got the fight. We're going to pay you $12 million and we're going to take 11, but you have to give us concessions in terms of ring size, glove size, and all that stuff. And so Marvin Hagler goes, great, let me call Bob Arum. And they go, no, Bob Arum. We're not doing business with Bob. And Marvin Hagler goes, what do you mean? He goes, he's been good to me. He goes, we've done 16 fights. He's been great. And he goes, no, we're going to do this with someone else, or we're going to do it ourselves. And Marvin said, I'm not really comfortable with that. I don't think that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And they said, well, wait a minute. Are you saying you will not do this fight unless Bob Arum is involved? And he said, yes, that guy's been good to me. That's my promoter. Either he's in or we're out. And Mike Traynor the next day called Bob Arum and said, all right, asshole, you got to put up $24 million. You have 24 hours to send the wire.
Yeah.
So here's the thing that was great. So for that fight, Bob Arum said to both guys, hey, this could be a home run. Why don't you lower your guarantee and play off the upside? We can do a lot of business. It'll be better. Ray Leonard and Mike Trainer said, you're out of your mind. We want our $12 million guarantee. Hagler said, Bob, you really think that this thing can blow up? And they said, yeah. Hagler ended up making $19 million for that fight because he took less of a guarantee. But the other story that I want to tell, if you ever look up the...
Steve, your phone breaking up a little.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, so the other story is, if you research on Google or go to Grok, when Ray Leonard fought Roberto Duran the first time in 1980, that was in Montreal. Look at the purses. Ray Leonard got paid a guaranteed $10 million. Duran got $1 million. You don't think he wanted more than just 9% or 10%?
Yeah.
But he said, you know what? His view was, let me beat this guy and I will parlay the rematch, which he did. It ended up being the no Moss fight. It wasn't great, but he got a lot more for winning that first fight. And they had that rematch, 6 months later or 3 months later or 5 months later in New Orleans at the Superdome. But Coach, my point is this. A lot of these guys want an exorbitant amount of money for one reason. I don't believe they have that much faith in themselves.
You know what, man? You right. Like that's what I'm seeing. They do a whole lot of barking online. They yell, they scream, they fill their chests up with air, but their actions are totally opposite of what they say out of their mouths. And I that's what I noticed. And I say, and I'm not saying every Gen Z boxer. I'm not saying that. But what I noticed, American boxing, what I've noticed is that we don't have a boxing culture in America anymore. In my opinion, it's more. It's like it's more like tabloidish. What you got going on? We tweeting, we talking. Yeah, sign this, sign that. Then the fans get involved, and the fans go to want to negotiate because the fans feel like they want to be a part of negotiations as well.
You know what's funny when you talk about the problems of today's boxing, and we always say today's boxers. Isn't it 90% of the time American boxers we're talking about? Like what happened with Stephen Fulton?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, Fulton has the nerve to tweet about how he was almost a victim, like he's feeling sorry for himself. And I'm like, hey, Steph, don't take this the wrong way. You didn't try to make weight. You flat out failed because you didn't even come close. But I really do think one of the issues is if this is a reality, okay? And I'm just surmising here, and your audience can agree or disagree. But if you said that Top Rank, if let's say they came up to Keyshawn with an offer, okay, Keyshawn, we're going to pay you $2 million to fight another Nahir Albright level guy, right? Mm-hmm. Do you think he'd ask for 5, or do you think he would just take 2 to fight another Nahir Albright?
Oh, he'll take that 2 in a heartbeat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing is, and you pointed this out, let's not act like Keyshawn Davis was like his Norfolk brethren, Pernell Whitaker.
Oh,
he won his title in a vacant shot. He didn't beat Vasyl Lomachenko. He beat Denis Baranchyk. And then in his first title defense, he didn't make weight, but him and his brother did try to assault Nahir Albright in the locker room after, right? After his brother lost the fight. And then he beats Jermaine Ortiz. Okay, he looked pretty solid. Then he beat Albright. It's not like it's Pernell Whitaker. So let me give you another example of the type of men we used to have in boxing. When Pernell Whitaker in 1993 agreed to fight the great Julio Cesar Chavez, he agreed to do it in front of 63,000 Mexicans at the Alamo Dome in San Antonio. Think about that. And Pernell Whitaker was a multi-division champion, considered top 2 or 3 in the world.
Pound for pound. He was the number 1 pound for pound at one point in time, too.
And not only that, him and his team basically went behind their back to HBO to make that fight on Showtime because they wanted the fight. Nowadays, you ask a fighter to fight 5 miles from their area code or zip code, they act like you're asking them to fight on Neptune or Mars. It's maddening.
I just, man, like, you just mentioned Julio Cesar Chavez and Pernell Whitaker. Both of those guys was number one pound for pound fighters at one point in time. Like, I was just looking that up today.
Yeah.
Chavez was number one. He was number one pound for pound fighter somewhere around that time. And then Pernell Whitaker was for like a year and 2 years as well. Like, literally. So I'm when I look at this, bro, and I'm like, man, when I hear these conversations from these fans, they have nothing to compare it to. So in their mind, this is the social media boxing era. These kids was 25, 26 years old, 27. They was born in 2000, 1999, stuff like that. And they come up in the TikTok era, the Instagram era. This is the TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube era of boxing, influencer boxing, a lot of streaming. A lot of this stuff is like crossing and bleeding into each other. Like, I'm starting to see the streaming world and the boxing world and the influencer world colliding together. And I thought about something you said earlier. You said that you think the networks and the promoters kind of created this atmosphere that we're in right now?
Yeah. I mean, once the network said to promoters, like, hey, we'll just take all of your shows. You get all of our dates. Well, then from a promoter's perspective, what impetus is there to actually give them real fights? And the other issue is, if every promoter has their own network deal, and this is before everyone was on the zone. Okay, so I think that dynamic has changed. But when all of these different promoters had their own network deal, you were never going to have a cross promotion. You're never going to have an intermingling of fights. So you're already separating and dividing the sport. The other thing is, once the networks themselves gave up quality control, because back in the good old days, Lou DiBello was at HBO. There was a gentleman by the name of Mort Sharnick at CBS. ABC had Alex Walu. Jay Larkin was at Showtime, right? And they had the ability to get a fight, and they say, nope, we're not taking that guy. Not good enough. We're not doing it. And a lot of fighters and promoters and managers, they leverage the exclusivity into easier fights. And here's another thing, and I know a lot of people aren't going to like this, but it's a very basic, simple economic theory principle from a great economic mind by the name of Walter Williams, not the old basketball player, but Walter Williams. He said something years ago that I didn't really understand. He actually thought the minimum wage depressed job rates. He thought when you put in minimum wage, you actually hurt job growth.
Yeah, I have his books. I have Walter Williams' books. I have a couple of his books.
Yeah, very, very sharp guy. Well, think about it, Coach. If fighters like Keyshawn Davis all have a contracted minimum, and let's say it's really high, here's the thing, human nature, and I'll admit I'd probably the same way. If Steve Kim had a minimum of $1.5 million per fight, Coach, do you ever think I'm going to fight anyone tough for that $1.5 million? No, I'm going to find the softest, weakest, worst fighter. Now, here's the other thing. But if I didn't have that in every fight, I had to start at ground zero.
Yeah.
I would say to everybody, all right, who do I fight here where I can make money? But at $1.5 million, that safety net, I'm going to try to fight the weakest, worst fighter every time. This is what has happened the last 25, 30 years, in my view.
Keyshawn Davis, I don't get it. Like just seeing, I was listening to Chris Mannix. He was with Sergio Mora, and he was saying the same thing that I heard. Because I told my audience, I say, look, man, I'm hearing that Top Rank. They finna put this boy on the shelf because they, I'm hearing this. I'm hearing this, and I can't say who I spoke to, but they gonna put this boy on the shelf because, man, they don't lost money. Like this guy just keep messing up. They don't lost money with him with the Edwin De Los Santos thing. Then you gave the fans your ass to kiss. He still really haven't apologized. And then what I noticed about this audience, this group of boxing fans, the boxing fans as well as the fighters, like the Keyshawns and the Shakurs and all these guys, not only do they have a sense of entitlement, there's no accountability. It's like this is the most unaccountable, excuse-making era of fighters, boxing, that I've ever seen in my life. I look at people like Marvin Hagler. This dude got it out the mud. You get what I'm saying? Julio Cesar Chavez, Salvador, Azuma Nelson, Eric Morales. Like, bro, like these guys, and these guys came up under harsher conditions. And what I also notice is the Tim Bradley era, the millennial era, those was the guys, and then Floyd Mayweather, he's from Gen X, but those guys were stamping these Generation Z fighters early. Yeah, man, he gonna be the next such and such. He this, he that, and he got the stamp of approval from this guy without even proving it. So
yeah,
go ahead.
I mean, Coach, what's that old? There's that meme or that saying about soft times create hard men and hard men create good times. There's a cycle.
That's true.
And the unfortunate part is when you coddle fighters, they are humans just like anybody else.
Right.
They will become products of their environment and their treatment. And, this is what happens when you fast track fighters, you pay them a lot of money. This is the effect of it. And, I have a theory, Coach, that Crawford's already retired. Inoue is really on his last segment of his career. Usyk has stated, this is my last dance. And Canelo is pretty much on his last legs as a fighter. Those are four very good fighters. I think that they are elite. I think they've represented themselves incredibly well. Once they leave, I don't want to say it's over, but who else is next to carry that mantle? Maybe Bam Rodriguez, maybe Boots Ennis, because I like Boots a lot.
Yeah.
But who else is there that you could really say is like, man, that's a real guy that could have fought in any other era? I don't see a lot of guys like that.
Yeah, I think too, their mentality and their heart is not there. Like, I just look at some of the brutal fights that Hagler had to go through. Like, you really had to earn it. You don't have to earn it now too much. It just, it's about swag. I'm doing streams with AB and Dean the Great. I'm hanging out with Jay Prince, Mob Ties. Bud gave me a stamp of approval. Andre Ward gave me the stamp of approval. Everybody know I'm next. Hey, hold on, Steve. This another one. I got 2 words for you. Let me write it down before I forget.
Yeah.
Superstar, and face of boxing. Oh my God. But if I hear another Gen Z fighter tell me or his team that he's a superstar and he's the face of boxing, Steve, who have you ever heard in this foolishness as much as you hear that I'm hearing today?
Not when it's this flimsy. See, those terms have been watered down. I mean, when I think of face of boxing, I think of the cult of Tank, who swore up and down he was. And look, Tank's an excellent fighter, but Tank has not fought since last March, and he may not fight till next March, earliest. So that's going to be about a full 2-year hiatus in what is still his physical prime. The other thing that is really going to hurt the game of boxing is you cannot have your best fighters fight so inactive or be inactive and fight so infrequently, because they have to carry your sport. And nowadays, because I've charted this last 4 or 5 years, every year at the end of the year, Coach, if you look at the Ring Magazine top 10, generally they average across the board less than 2 fights. Like those 10 fighters generally have about 18 fights. I actually charted this because I wrote an article about 4 or 5 years ago. In 1993, the top 10 Ring Magazine, pound for pound, their 10 fighters fought a total of like 38 times. So that means they average about 4 fights, basically, the top 10. The last 4 or 5 years, you get 20 or less. So they each fight about 2 times or less. I don't know how that's sustainable, because that type of load management, look, even if you load manage in the NBA, you still get to see the best players in the world 65, 70 times.
Yeah.
There's a reason why boxing is a niche sport. Part of the reason is your greatest and best fighters simply are shelled for too long.
Man, it makes perfect sense, because if you don't have the top guys that you're constantly seeing fighting each other, they're fighting far and few in between, and they're very active on Twitter. I can tell you that. Like, they are very active on Twitter. Twitter is the boxing ring, and the comments and the typing. A lot of fights go on there. I've seen undisputed matches, pound for pound fights. I've seen some classic fights on Twitter. Unfortunately, it has not translated into the ring.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Steve.
I have a question for the audience and you. If you went to a restaurant that only served your favorite meal once a year, would you regularly go to that restaurant? Yes or no?
Hey, y'all heard it, man. Hey, I can tell you no. If you're gonna serve it once a year, no, that doesn't make sense. No, I'm gonna say you no.
I think it's hard to stay in business that way when your best dishes are never cooked. And the other thing that is maddening is I don't know what's going on with Shakur. Shakur is fighting everybody.
Yeah.
On Twitter.
Yeah.
And I just don't understand why. Look, I get it. Him and Devin Haney at 144 seems to be a no man's land. You're not going to get that deal done. Yeah. So with that said, I don't think anyone really wants to see Rayo Valenzuela in what is his Zuffa boxing debut, because he's also promised, I'm going to be making the real fights, none of this Rayo Valenzuela. Okay, fine. So with that said, why not Gary Antoine Russell? He's a solid fighter. He's athletic. He beat Rayo Valenzuela. He's the current WBA champion. He only has one loss. He's got good power. And when the fans, because I got this on Twitter, well, Steve, that's because he'd win every round. So wait a minute. If that is the prerequisite for not wanting to see a Shakur Stevenson fight, well, you don't want to see any Shakur Stevenson fight, right? Because Shakur is going to be the favorite against 99.9% of the fighters in the world today at 140 and below. That's the reality. He is that good at what he does. And the other thing is people say, well, that'll be a boring fight. Folks, it's a Shakur Stevenson fight. It ain't going to be Ward Gaddy. But I'd at least like to see him fight another athletic black fighter. Okay, so let's stop putting all these hurdles in it. You actually want to see the fights that are good or not. I know, I get it. We're not going to get fight of the year with Shakur Stevenson. But you know what? Last summer when Williams Zepeda pressed him, I thought that was a pretty good fight.
Yeah, that was a good fight. That was a good fight. I like that fight. And, I came up in the era, as I tell the audience, I came up in the era when the black fighters fought each other. Like, all of them fought each other, whether it was Jay Tony, Mike McCallum, whether it was Zuma Nelson, whether it was Julian Jackson, or the Jerry McClellan, whoever.
Oh, Tommy Hearns. Yeah. Look, Hagler Hearns, but look, the issue is with Shakur. I get it. You want the most amount of money, and you signed a big deal with Zuffa. There's not a lot of options right now. But the problem is with Shakur, he does not do himself a lot of favors, and I get it. And it seems like everyone that would be somewhat interesting happens to be his brothers.
Yep.
I mean, what are you, the Hadleys, the old the skit on A Living Color? Hey, man, I mean, come on, it's ridiculous.
Man,
and that's another thing about the old days. One of the best fights of 1991, and I wrote a story for my Substack on this about 4 months ago on the anniversary of the fight. Simon Brown was a hard-hitting welterweight. I mean, this guy would, let's put it this way. If he was a welterweight in the last 10, 15 years, that would be the toughest fight for Terrence Crawford. It would not be Errol Spence. It wouldn't be Sean Porter. It would be Simon Brown. That guy was a hammer. And his best friend that actually lived like 4 or 5 houses down from, because they lived in the same street, was Maurice Blocker. And they were both welterweight champions, but then the most amount of money that they could make was against one another. Coach, you ought to watch that fight. How they fought each other. It was an unbelievable war. Blocker troubled him with his reach and his length, pieced him up early, but then Simon Brown was just too strong and he knocked him out. Both guys were crying after the fight because they understood. We put our friendship on the line.
Their kids
it was highly emotional.
Yeah, their kids play with each other and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, but you know what? They were men. They were men who did the job. They were honorable. I don't think we're that honorable anymore in boxing. Because, Coach, I really believe that.
Yeah, the boxing culture is, we don't have a boxing culture anymore. It's more social media than anything. And another thing, man, you brought up Simon Brown. For the life of me, I do not understand why Simon Brown has not been elected into the Hall of Fame.
That is a shame because he made a lot of title defenses. I believe he was on some pound for pound lists. And he was a guy, unfortunate, and he fought on different networks, right? But he never had that one great victory that he needed.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he, like a lot of other fighters, he took some losses late, right? When he moved up in weight and he taken a little bit of erosion to what he did. But when I look Like, let's go to our friend Tim Bradley, who may or may not be listening on the show right now, right? Tim Bradley, I covered most of his career. I was at a lot of fights. I mean, this guy was a world champion, and he had to travel to England to fight Junior Witter, one of the worst stinking styles. And then early on, he went all the way to Canada, I think in Montreal, to fight Kendall Holt in a unification bout. And then he went to Detroit. I was at this fight when he fought Devin Alexander in the Silverdome, one of the worst venues I've ever seen. I mean, Detroit was worn down at that point, got a little bit better. And then every time he needed to do something for his career, he had to do it. It was a hard road. So when I hear some of these fans, mostly the PBC pom-pom waivers, ripping Tim Bradley that he shouldn't be a Hall of Famer, I tell these people, hey, guys, if Tim Bradley is the line that you draw where you don't make the Hall of Fame, I hate to tell you this, guys, most of your fighters, they don't make it then. Tim Bradley is absolutely a Hall of Famer. You look at his resume, across the board, unification bouts, fights of the year, he was on the pound-for-pound list. Coach, I have a question. Who's close to having a Tim Bradley run right now in boxing? Seriously, that's in their prime.
Yeah, I can't, man. I can't on American boxing, because I always try to isolate American boxing because American boxing don't represent boxing globally anymore. It's more compartmentalized here, but I don't really see any. And I'm like, man, I'm looking at it. I have to say this to you, Steve. I don't, I understand the ring. They got their pound for pound list. I feel just because you have 10 slots on the pound for pound list doesn't mean that you have to have every slot filled.
Oh, I'm with you. Coach, I think sometimes that pound for pound list could be 8 or 9 fighters. Sometimes it could be 2. When Floyd and Manny were on top of the food chain about 10, 15 years ago, I said number 1 and number 2 is Floyd, then Manny, and no one else. That's it. Other times it's a little bit deeper, but you're right, because there are times now, the last 3, 4 spots, people are just voting for their favorite guy that gives them an interview. Yeah. Let's be honest about it.
And I'm like, man, and the reason why I say that is because just because you have 10 slots don't mean you have to have 10 fighters there. You may have a good 3 or 4 that's strong, and those other guys have to have more work to do in order to get on the list. That's my entire argument. Look, he got potential. But just because we have a slot open don't mean he needs to be put in the spot. Let him do some more work. And then after he do some more work, we go back and look at it. Okay, you know what? Now we can justify putting him here, justify putting that guy there. You don't put him there just for the sake of putting him there. You know what I mean? And to me, that's what it feels like to me.
I mean, think about Keyshawn, who has a lot of talent, right? But is he even in the top 25, top 30 pound for pound based on accomplishments?
No, hell no.
I don't think he is. And for him to say that I need $5 million, I would actually say based on what? Now, look, I will give him credit for being a good regional draw in Norfolk. Although, after the stuff he pulled last year, he went backwards in that regard.
Yeah.
And I remember watching about 2 months ago when he fought Nahir Albright. Coach, halfway through that fight, I was bored to death. I was bored to death. I mean, say what you want about Devin Haney. He had one very tainted loss that's now off the record. I don't count that because I think there were some issues there. And look, we got to put a context to everything. He fought a guy that came in overweight on purpose and got busted for PEDs. If you count that as a legitimate loss, you're a dishonest broker, okay? But Devin Haney may not be the most exciting guy, but his resume is actually pretty damn good. And I don't know what they're going to do now, but Devin is a guy that I will give credit to, that he's putting in good, solid work. But when I look at today's fights, like, Coach, do you really want to pay money for Rolly Romero, Teofimo Lopez? Do you really want to put your hard-earned money on the line and shake out your piggy bank and look for coins underneath your couch pocket and say, hey, everyone, let's pitch in for Rolly Romero, Teofimo Lopez?
Man, I'm not even gonna lie to you, Steve. I'm not even, bro. Like I don't know when that fight is happening. I'm not even excited about it. I heard they had a press conference. I didn't know anything about it. I'm like, bro, like this is the most like Rolly Romero and and Teofimo Lopez. You know, both of these guys, but put it this way, at least they fighting each other. They friends. So at least they fighting each other. I think they friends. I don't know if they call each other brothers, but they friends. So we gonna see how that work out. Steve, in closing, I've heard you say time and time again, you like, man, you I know for a fact you love boxing. And I know you're kind of like this, you heartbroken at the fact that just the way it's at right now. And I'm not gonna lie, bro, it's like we going through a dark period to me. You know, now to the Gen Z population and generation, it's good. It's all good because, you know, yeah, man, you know, we got AB, he's streaming. Hey, hold on, Adrian Broner. Steve, I gotta ask you this question. You remember when Adrian Broner was being billed, when he was over there with Golden Boy, when he was being billed as the next Floyd Mayweather?
I do remember, and I thought that, again, you call him Floyd Mayweather, I call him Faux Mayweather, F-A-U-X. Look, he was a pretty good fighter in his day. I was there when Maidana ripped his head off in San Antonio. It was never really quite the same.
Yeah.
But the one thing I did respect about Broner was he made it fun. He was kind of a character, had some good fights here and there.
Yeah.
He'd make you laugh. I think it's kind of sad becoming a self-parody what he is now, and I guess him and Dean have kind of broken up. You know, they'll probably make up by what, Thursday?
Yeah, they'll be back.
So I mean, the thing is about Floyd, I think Floyd gets a bad rap though, and I've kind of defended him on this. When Floyd got the De La Hoya opportunity, keep this in mind, he was 37-0.
Yeah.
These guys that make these demands aren't even 25-0, much less 20-0 times, right?
Right.
Also, Floyd was a 4-division world champion going into that fight, and he was no worse than number 2 or 3 pound for pound. And in that fight, when they negotiated against De La Hoya, he did not have a lot of leverage. So he gave up the weight class, he gave up the ring size, and I think even the size of the gloves. So you could say, so look, whatever entitlement that Floyd eventually got, he earned. So think about it. So compare this to Keyshawn, who's a 1-division champion who got stripped of his title, made no successful title defenses, is nowhere near the top 10 pound for pound. I actually do not have a problem with Floyd like a lot of people. I don't actually think that he ruined American boxing. I really don't. He actually ate what he killed, and he killed what he ate to a certain degree. I don't like what his career became. I got bored of it. But early on, and I was there when he beat Genaro Hernandez for the world title. I was there what he did to Chico Corrales, one of the 2 or 3 best performances I have ever seen live. I was like, wow, that must have been what Ray Leonard's like. But the thing that I don't like is when these guys like Ryan and Teal would say, well, before we get to the money part of Mayweather, we got to be oh, God, jerk off motion that. You guys don't even mean it. You guys are just saying it. It's just mental masturbation because you guys think it sounds cool. But you guys have actually never done anything to really build any type of real case. But they're very lucky that there's not a lot of depth in boxing, and the networks have kind of lost control of quality control. And the sanctioning bodies allow it. I mean, Teofimo Lopez, last I checked, Coach, didn't he lose 11 out of 12 rounds to Shakur?
Yeah, pretty much.
Right.
If not all 12.
So how the hell does that qualify for a welterweight title shot? I think these are the things. Here's the thing, Coach. Guys like you and I, we feel this way because we've seen boxing in a better state.
Yeah.
That is the reality. If you didn't see it in the mid-'80s on, you're not going to have an appreciation. There's no context. There's no starting point, right? But if you saw it, where Hagler, let me give you one more Hagler story before I leave. Hagler, after he beats Hearns, I mean, that was a pretty damn good fight. I mean, he went through 30 rounds in about 8 minutes, right? So he thought he had retired for a while because he got sick of the grind. He said, you know what, I've done it. But when he was talked into fighting, the number 1 rated contender in all 3 major sanctioning bodies was a guy by the name of John the Beast Mugabe.
Yeah.
He was 25-0 with 25 knockouts, and he had been on NBC. And I remember as a kid going, God damn, this guy is a beast. Like, he just looks scary. And this is what would happen today if a Hagler-like figure had a Mugabe. He'd be like, well, who's he? I don't need to fight him. He let him build something up. He's on the wrong side. They give you all this bull junk, right? Hagler had no doubt, like, well, that's my obligation, and I have to fulfill it. Again, there's a word called honor. We've lost that in boxing.
Man, Steve, I want to thank you for coming on the show, taking your time out, your busy schedule. Is there anything else that you would like to close with before you go?
No, just keep watching the fights you want to. You boxing fans, I believe someone needs to stick up for you. I am not fighter first. I don't believe when Nico Ali Walsh says, boxing's great when fighters are put first. No, it's not. Fighters being put first has put us in this situation. Yeah. Boxing is better when the fans come first. That's the reality. The customer matters, or they should. And with that said, if you're a fan, subscribe to my Substack at stevekimboxing.substack.com.
All right, I did. I subscribed. I'll drop the link in there in the chat.
Well, I appreciate that. Now, I'll be having articles. I just dropped a short Korean Co-Sell podcast. And later on today on YouTube, the 3 knockdown rule with Mario Lopez and I come out.
All right. You said at 4 o'clock. So that'll be 7 o'clock East Coast time. East Coast time. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I got you. Shout out. I mean, Steve Kim, man. Let's give him a round of applause.